The Bible is true. The Bible is really the Word of God. The Book of Mormon is not when you examine the evidences. That's why I believe in the Bible. My faith goes beyond subjective hope. It goes beyond a subjective wishing in the existence of God. My faith is founded on the knowledge of the truth. And that is, those are simply the evidences and the Bible itself. He mentions a few other things, but I don't want to get into too much of that. He was talking about basically the suboptimality of the earth, that, why are there very few places wherein we can live, we can inhabit? Why is there so many problems on the earth? He mentioned that 70% of the earth is covered by water, and it's salt water, we can't use it. Yes, but are you breathing? Are you living? Are you having your being? Yes, that's because God created it for you to inhabit. Therefore, there's nothing wrong with that. God created it that way. And God did make failed planets because life was not suited for those planets. Because He doesn't want us to live on those planets. He wants us to live here. He created us to live here. That's His will. There's no problem with that. He mentions a few Bible contradictions in his speech when he says that God lied when He said, "The day you eat of that fruit, you shall surely die." No, He didn't, because Adam died spiritually. He mentions Jesus is supposedly the Prince of Peace, yet in Matthew 10:34, He says, "I came not to bring peace, but a sword." The sword there is not literal sword. That is figurative. That's an expression. It's figurative language to teach that the sword of division will be for those who decide to come after Christ, take up their cross and follow Jesus. That is the end result for those who decide to follow Him, is division. When you have family members who are not Christians, there is that sort of division brought by Christ. He mentions several other things. Why do animals have to kill each other? Supposedly animals killing each other is evil. Again, what's your definition of evil? Genesis 9 verse 3 says that God gave the animals to man to eat. Before that, there was no killing of animals. There was no eating of animals, at least authorized by God. And animals did not kill and eat each other. Originally, God created animals to be herbivores, not carnivores. So that's the answer to those statements there. But once again, I'd like to say that these preconceived ideas when you approach the Scriptures are basically fruitless unless you actually examine the Scriptures for themselves and come to a conclusion based on the evidence you've seen, not on these sporadic thoughts. Thank you.
Evidence out there does not suggest in any way, including that of evolution, that we came from snakes. Common misconception. It's not accurate at all. Evolution says that all living things somewhere down the line share common ancestors. That does not mean that we evolved from monkeys. That means somewhere down the line we share relatives with things that we would call monkeys today, and there is a ton of evidence for that. This is not a debate on evolution. I'm not going to bring it all up, but there are bones that have been found, such as Australopithecus, and they can show you in any museum, any serious museum that you go to, you can see the evolution and the fossil records out there. It absolutely does not say that we came from a snake, and I would never make that assertion. I would recommend for you to look up any book on anthropology. Just pick one and read it. I do not think that there's any one major book that we should trust regardless of what it says. Any book on anthropology. The fossil records are there. I would also recommend reading Richard Dawkins' latest book, The Greatest Show on Earth. At times it can be a bit like a biology textbook, so the good stuff's in chapter 7 and 11. It gets right to it. So he talked about the Bible and said that it's infallible and has consistency. Malachi 3 says that God does not change. Ezekiel 32 said that God repented. Exodus 25 said that people inherit sin from their parents. Ezekiel 18 says that the son does not bear the sin of the father. James 1, God does not tempt man. In Genesis, God tempted Adam and Eve. Exodus 20, thou shalt not kill. Exodus 35:2, kill those that work on the Sabbath. Romans 15, he is a God of peace. Exodus 15, he's a God of war. John 1 said that no man has ever seen God. Genesis 32, I have seen God. We know that God is all-powerful, but Judges 1:19, God could not overcome chariots of iron. You're not the only ones that have made this mistake. The Greeks once thought that thunder was from the god Thor. Meteorologists know better now. They know where that comes from, and that god is disproved. The Greeks also had a Greek goddess of agriculture called Demeter, and she was the reason crops sprang up from the ground. Well, now farmers know how to make those crops come out of the ground, and they know that, therefore, Demeter is disproved. So why are these religious claims so out there, so contradictory to what we know to be true every day? It's because religion was our first attempt at philosophy, geology. It was our first attempt to explain things. We naturally just have a fear of the unknown. We do. That's why when you see someone with a mask on, you take a step back for a second. It's kind of scary. That's why a lot of people have a fear of clowns. It's a lot of the reason why I went into psychology as a field. I wanted to know why people had those fears. When someone had a clown face, it's just a smile all the time. It's the fear of the unknown. It can be terrifying because we don't understand it. Well, that's why the Bible is so terrifying. That's why there are so many scary things that were happening, because that was their primitive, archaic men. That was their attempt at geology, at geography, at cosmology, and explaining why life is here, and why things are here, and why things happen, and why tornadoes come through, and hurricanes. It looks like massive powers of a God, when in fact, now we know better. Science is not the enemy. You trust science every day. While your family is in the waiting room praying for you, the doctor is in the operating room using science. When it comes down to it, that's what we trust. So, looking at science from multiple points of view, typically, when we think about science, we think of how it could possibly disprove God and how we need to fight against it. I'm not talking about science in that respect. I'm talking about the way you got here this evening. Your transportation is a product of science. Communication for your cell phone is a product of science. Security, the locks and alarm systems on your home is a product of science. Housing, food, your jobs, the banking system that you put your investment in, it's all science. And you trust it. The internet to get your information from. Science. So why do you trust the Bible when it's anti-science in so many areas? Who do you think you should trust on historical facts? Historians that study it every day, or Christian preachers? What about talking animals? Do you trust the zoologists who work with those animals to see if that's possible? Or do you trust the Christian preachers? When it comes to all humans descending from one couple, Adam and Eve, and all having that relationship, do you trust the anthropologists that study man and have the fossil records? Or do you trust the Christian preachers? When talking about the age of the earth, and getting down in the rocks and figuring out where this all came from and how long the earth has been here, do you trust the geologists who study these rocks every day? Or do you trust the Christian preachers? And finally, when it comes to your health, when it comes down to it, and it's you that's affected, Do you trust medical doctors and medical science? Or do you trust the Christian preachers? Do you trust the Bible? When it comes down to it, you make the decision of science every day.